Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to a joint public hearing with the Plan Commission and the Town Board on Thursday, September 12, 2013, beginning at 6:30. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll start off with our first public hearing. Notice is hereby given that there will be a public hearing before the Joint Plan Commission and Town Board at the Town Hall Thursday, September 12, 2013 at 6:30 p.m. to consider the following matter: conditional use application. Property owner is Eric Cook. Project name is Green Man Tree and Landscaping. Being petitioned by Dan and Julie Augustin. And they are seeking approval of conditional use permit. The occupancy of a residential use in the establishment of landscape business that provides landscape maintenance and installation, tree trimming, removal, lawn maintenance, and snow plowing services. It is located in the B2 local business district. And I'll flip it over to Jamie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The business is being proposed for Highway 164. It's an existing 7-acre piece of property that's zoned B2. It has an existing residence on it, as well as a roughly 30-foot by 60-foot accessory building. As you had mentioned, the applicants are interested in purchasing the property, living in the residence as their permanent residence, and then running a landscape business that they own from the accessory structure. As you had mentioned, it's landscape maintenance and installation, lawn maintenance, tree trimming and removal, and snow plowing. They do not have any retail or wholesale sales. Everything they do is from the property. They go out to their clients. Per the per the town of Waukesha Code of Ordinance, in the B2, there's not a specific designation for landscape businesses in any of our business districts or industrial districts. There are similar uses in the district, so I was recommending doing a conditional use for this. It's actually, I guess, in a sense called an unspecified conditional use. The site plan that they provided, they are looking to do some improvements to the site. Backed by the accessory structure, they're looking at doing a more graveled area for the outdoor storage of trucks and mainly their trucks. Their trailers and tractors are going to be kept inside of the building. And then more to the south, they're looking at expanding on the driveway with some gravel, and it's for circulation of bringing the trucks in, backing the trailers into the accessory building, but then also for employees to be parking. Employees come to the site, park their cars, and then they get in their trucks and they go out to the job site. As part of their tree trimming business, they do cut down trees and mulch them up. So they would be looking at bringing some of the mulch or some of the larger wood back to the site, and that's where they have kind of a future material storage area there. And again, as they get orders for mulch, they would put it in their trucks and take it from the site and take it to their clientele, as well as any firewood. For plan of operation, they have a total of 8 full-time employees or equivalent part-time, depending on the season. Their hours of operation are proposed as 6:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. weekdays and 7:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. weekends, and that's May through October. And then their hours slightly changed from November through April. It's 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. weekdays, 7:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. weekends. And then they also do snow removal of commercial parking lots and such. During freezing rain events or snow events, they are looking for 24 hours where they may have to come and get their equipment and get out to service their customers before they open for business. Currently, the total number of vehicles, tractors, and trailers that they have two F-350 jump trucks, which roughly have a 3 to 4 yard capacity. One larger international dump truck that has a 5+ yard capacity, and then one F-350 pickup truck, and then they have a bucket lift truck for their tree trimming service. They have 2 skid loaders, 1 Kubota tractor, and then 3 trailers to move the equipment around. They are also looking for the potential storage of a diesel fuel tank that would not exceed 500 gallons in capacity, although on the application I think that this wasn't necessarily set in stone if the town had any issues with it. So that's kind of a general overview of the site plan and the plan of operation. I guess before we go into any recommendations, I'll turn it back over to the Planning Commission for any questions.
And also the petitioner is here tonight if anybody had any questions for them. And we can also open it up to public comments at this time if anybody wants to make any comments. Anybody have any questions?
I guess I just have a procedural question. This is a public hearing. We have 4 public hearings tonight. I think those public hearings need to be convened and then closed, and then we discuss them as a planning commission. Is that not correct?
Yes.
And I have some questions, but I think that's left for later. Is that correct?
Going once, going twice, and we'll close that public hearing and move on. And this is the next public hearing, Thursday, September 12th, 2013, beginning at 6:37 p.m. Conditional use application, property owner is John Salman, project name is Mr. My Guy Auto, the petitioner is Jay Sindick. He's seeking approval for a conditional use permit that will allow him the service and repair of vehicles. His property is located in a B3 general business district. We've already met here and approved his primary use, and I believe it's his primary use, and that is for the sale of used vehicles. And is Mr. Sindick, are you here tonight? Not here? Jamie?
Yeah, you summed it up well. We did approve the site plan of operation last month. At the time that we put that staff report together, it was made apparent to the town that on occasion there are services to those vehicles that he does, repairs, mechanical services. And because of that, in the B3 zoning district, that requires, or that portion of the operation requires a conditional use. So everything that the town approved last month stays in place. This approval tonight, if the Planning Commission board so chooses, would allow him to do the mechanical services and repairs to those vehicles. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Any comments from anybody in the audience? Going once, going twice. We can close that public hearing, and we will move on to the next. And that is, there will be a public hearing before the Joint Plan Commission Town Board on Thursday, September 12th at 6:30 p.m. Actually 6:40, to consider the zoning code text amendment for R4 single-family residence districts. It's an ordinance to create section 13-3-9B R4 single-family residence district within the town of Waukesha to allow for smaller sized single-family residences consistent with surrounding land uses that have been platted within the corporate city limits of Waukesha. Jamie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had assisted the town in putting together the ordinance and the public hearing for this. I was not the original author of the R4 ordinance. I've taken the last day or so to try to bring myself up to speed on the ordinance and the background. I've also kind of discussed both of these issues with Waukesha County, and it's my recommendation to the Planning Commission and the board that we table it for a later date. I believe that in the R4 ordinance and in a few minutes the PUD ordinance, there's still a few matters that need to be addressed internally with some questions that I have, as well as some feedback that I've received from Waukesha County before approving it and then sending it to them. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would turn it back over to you.
And I will open this up to the public comments on this issue.
You do also come forward.
Good evening.
Eric Carlton, South 22, West 25489, Harris Highland Drive, being petitioner. I've been waiting 16 months on this issue. Can you specify your concerns, sir?
Well, as I had looked at the R4 district, and in some of my conversations with staff and elected officials, I was led to believe that there's a few legal non-conforming circumstances in the town that we were trying to potentially address with this ordinance in itself. Also, that it was potentially thought about as being used for some of the island developments or developments that we have at the fringes of the town that are surrounded by the city of Waukesha. The problem is, as I read through the ordinance, I didn't see any kind of a map amendment that went with it. So right now, we're creating a new zoning district that ultimately we don't know where it applies. So I didn't think that we necessarily did due diligence in notifying all the residents as to the creation of this new district, and yet we didn't tell the residents where we're applying it to. We don't know. I don't know if it's, right now it seems like the intent is the R4 is applicable throughout the entire town. So does that mean that anybody that has a 100-acre farm can now come through and divide it up into 8,000 square foot lots? I don't know if that was necessarily the intent when this was written. I've also got some feedback from Waukesha County, and in its current form, I was led to believe that we would not get a favorable support from their staff, and ultimately any zoning ordinance or map amendments that we make here at the town ultimately have to go to the county before it can become effective. They ultimately give the final say in approving it. So I'm recommending to the town, let's not send something to the county that we've already kind of got a little bit of a sense that they're just going to throw it back to us and say that it's not acceptable. So, part of it is also the staff transition, which is not your fault, that's my fault, and I try to do my best to get up to speed.
In dealing for the last year and a half with the previous town planner, the property intention for the rezoning was for properties that already exist, such as mine. 20,000 square feet are required to be R3 zoned. I have 17,000.
Okay.
I can't do anything with my home. I can't add on. Technically, if my insurance company or my mortgage company finds out that I'm a B3 with a home, I'm in a lot of trouble. If my home burns down tomorrow, I can't rebuild it.
Okay.
So that's the issue at hand, was the creation of the R4 district for those people who are in my situation, not to create the ability for people to subdivide their properties, but to help people who are already in this situation, that they can apply to come into the R4 and have their property become compliant where it is currently non-compliant.
I understand.
So
I
that's the
appreciate that
intention.
information.
Mr. Carlton, a quick question. Is your home on well and septic?
Correct.
Okay. That's one of the other considerations that the county had said that they're not interested in its current form. They wouldn't be supportive of this because the state law says, and the county for that matter also, that you have to have 20,000 square feet for well and septic, and that's why, that's probably why our R3 is reflective of that 20,000 square foot minimum. or one of the reasons. And that's something that we also have to address. And perhaps within that R4 district, there could be something like a community system, a community treatment system. There's just a few other things that have to be worked out, unfortunately, that weren't.
This problem dates back to the 1920s, unfortunately, where these properties were inappropriately cut up and homes were built on them. And we're stuck. My neighbors and I were stuck on these properties.
Do we, Attorney De La Mora, I'll ask this of you, we've noticed a public hearing for this. We're gonna make a few changes to the ordinance that will reflect some of the issues that we just spoke about. Do we need to re-notice a public hearing, or has the public hearing on this issue been had?
To the extent that this is modified to include provisions that address the concerns that have been outlined, it would be necessary, in my opinion, to have another public hearing, because you are basically limiting the scope of the application of this ordinance, particularly if in fact it is intended, which is good practice, to have a zoning map amendment accompanying.
How, and then to Clerk Salentine, how quickly would you be able to renotice a public hearing? And what is the next earliest possible agenda we can get this back on for?
We'd have to notice it to the paper next Friday to get to the October,
Friday the 20th?
Friday the 20th.
And Planner Varchek, will you be able to have the required information that you need back to us within a week and a day?
I think that's gonna be tough.
Okay.
I would like to say that, yes, I could, but I think that there's some more background that I would like to get from staff, and it might even require maybe a meeting with the county, and I don't know if that can happen all in a week and a day. I understand the urgency, and I can try my best, but ultimately, when the public hearing or public notice goes in the paper, we have to have a final draft for people to look at as well, and I would prefer to have a little bit more breathing room to make sure that what we're doing is right and we get it right the first time. Especially if we're looking at doing a map amendment, it's gonna require an investigation of the township as to where this might be applicable, if that's the direction we wanna go. If we wanna just say, it's a zoning district that we're creating, as people foresee that they need it, they can come in and request a rezone. That's another option, but.
So you'd have to have it in by the 20th in order to meet the next plan commission meeting, is that what you're saying?
I'd have to send it to the paper, it'll hit the paper that Wednesday then. And it has to have 2 notices.
Okay. So then the next earliest scheduled plan commission meeting we could have it on would be for the November meeting? Unless we had a special plan commission meeting. Dan doesn't look at it. We will get it on the earliest possible agenda. I will push Jamie along and see if we can't get those things accomplished and get it in Jamie, and get it in the paper on the 20th.
I would
We'll do our
appreciate it.
best.
I've been persistent, but this is taking
Too long.
some time. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think just a suggestion, and I ask Attorney De La Mora, would it not be appropriate then that this public hearing would not be closed, it would be held open and then resumed at that later date?
No, you would have to close it because the subject matter of the public hearing needs to be crafted, drafted, and publicized.
Okay. Anybody else wishing to speak on this issue?
Angie Van Scyoc, South 51, West 25375 Glendale Road, Town of Waukesha. I was chairman when this came forward. Mr. Carlton is absolutely correct. This should have been moved forward by now. I'm a little disappointed because it sounds as though there hasn't been communication with the previous planner, which would have given you a lot of information that you needed. There were areas identified within the town that this was going to apply. It was in no way intention to be a new zoning district that could be applied to new developments. It was strictly to be for those areas like Mr. Carlton's, which is a very narrow focus, who previous boards have not properly addressed the situation. They are in crisis. You cannot say that the county zoning of 20,000 feet needs to apply. It's impossible. And so you're not doing a service to the town of Waukesha, those residents, if you pursue that kind of matter. Yes, this is going to be a discussion with the county. The county needs to be, the county would like very much for everybody to be in compliance, and I think quite frankly on city sewer and water. But in the meantime, the rest of us who are dealing with septic systems, and in some cases septic systems that are not on conforming properties, need to be taken care of. This is no fault of the property owners, and the previous board was attending to this to take care of those particular situations where the property owners have identified themselves at risk at no fault of their own, and it needs to be corrected. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Wayne Walker, Big Bend Road. If you would envision using that new type zoning today, where would you envision it being used?
I don't know if I can answer that question because I don't have enough background information, but I think as the former chairman had said, it's for existing conditions in the town, not for new development.
Would it be more or less around the city of Waukesha or any place in the town?
Primarily islands.
Primarily islands and at the fringe.
I would suggest that we don't get that kind of zoning in the rest of the town. The town deserves bigger zoning than that.
That's correct.
Thank you.
That is correct, and the discussion centered around only town islands.
Pardon?
The discussion centered only around town islands. There was no intent that the entire town could be zoned R4 or any other portion of the town other than existing islands. Thank you. Anybody else? Then we'll close this public hearing and move on to the next. Notice is hereby given. There will be a special public hearing before the Joint Plan Commission and Town Board at Town Hall Thursday, September 12th, beginning at 6:53 p.m. to reconsider the following matter: zoning code text amendment, conditional uses in residential planned unit developments, an ordinance to repeal and recreate section 13-2-9 sub 22A and section 13-2-9 sub 22B residential planned unit developments and the municipal code of the town of Waukesha. Planner Rybarczyk, I'll turn it over to you.
Mr. Chairman, I have basically similar comments as I had mentioned on the R4. Had taken a quick look at it, tried to bring myself up to speed. It's my understanding that the proposed language was looked at kind of making the existing residential PUD more comprehensive or easier to understand, easier to administer. It looked at kind of replacing the numeric calculations for density and open space with a yield plan. Also trying to provide a little bit more flexibility for developers using this by creating a density bonus. Providing a guarantee for open space, which I think has been possibly an issue in the past, and then also starting to look at other forms of development such as condominiums that could be used in the PUD. As I had looked at it though, and one or a couple comments that were given to me is that it's still lacking any minimum bulk standards as far as, you know, when a PUD comes forward, what is the town using as the baseline to judge what's the front setback, side setback, rear setback, floor area ratios of the lot. Again, I also had conversations with county staff, which I was led to believe that Roger was working with them on this. Right now, our language is showing a 20% open space for the gross area of the development, the Waukesha County County Development Plan, and sewer pack, and there's some other studies out there that typically you look at 40 to 60% open space for a PUD or conservation type development, as well as the density bonuses are more in the range of 20% to 40%, and not necessarily 10%. There was a letter that was shared with me that came from Waukesha County that was August 31st of 2012 that had identified some other areas that I didn't necessarily see in the latest draft of the residential PUD that might have been, there might have been a reason for that. I just didn't have the information as to why. And then there was some specific terminology as far as the yield plan, community assets that were found in the district but weren't necessarily defined. So I think it's somewhat subjective as to what do those mean. When you see community assets as part of the open space of a ordinance, what does community assets mean? And ultimately, you know, what is a development yield plan and how does one go about creating the yield plan? So because of those issues, I'm recommending to the Planning Commission and the board that we table it until further information can be gathered.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody wishing to speak on this topic?
Angie Van Scyoc, South 51 West 25375 Glendale Road. This particular issue, Jamie, as well, perhaps the board would consider providing some funding so that our current planner can talk to our former planner. There was lots of work that was done on this, several meetings with the county. They hammered out lots of the issues, and it was really a matter, if I remember correctly, of the town having more control over the site than what the county was proposing in its recommendations. And so I know Roger was very specific that he felt the town should have as much control as possible in a PUD type development, and my understanding is that he was crafting that, and certainly he's brought that before us a number of times, you know, to allow us that flexibility. It seems it's difficult for me to understand why these are on the agenda and being addressed if our current planner hasn't even had a conversation with our former planner. And if there's not funds for that, then those funds perhaps should be identified, because I think we'll save lots of time in having the ability to be able to have the current planner speak to the former planner. Not that he might agree with the former planner, but at least he'll have a basis for the development that was presented to me. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will address that. This town board fired the previous planner. He doesn't have any interest. We did allocate funds for him to speak here. He doesn't have any interest in helping out. Thank you very much. Any other comments on this public hearing?
A professional like Roger Dupler would have an interest in providing another professional like Jamie Rabarek the pleasure of his background. And I don't believe that political positioning is appropriate in this situation. These professionals will talk to each other if you don't interfere, Mr. Mayor.
Nobody's interfering. He's been invited here, and he doesn't want to come. Thank you for your input. I don't think you should be speaking for anybody else. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this issue? Then we'll close the public hearings, and we'll move on to the Plan Commission.